So there it is, the 10 bolt General Motors 10 bolt rear end. This is in my 97 Trans Am. This has actually got the Auburn locker in it, which is why it's pretty important to cover it up, because we don't want to get stuff in there. You don't want that in any of your differentials. You don't want any of this extra junk. So we're going to clean that out. So we already took off the differential cover, just jacked the car up, secured it with jack stands, took off the 10 bolts, obviously it's a 10 bolt rear end, that held on the rear cover, and made note there's some brackets and stuff on those bolts too, but pretty easy. It's going to go back on just as easy. There's an old gasket on this one. Sometimes you'll run into RTV sealer, other times you're going to run into just a gasket, or sometimes both. All of it needs to come off, so it doesn't really matter. You just scrape it good, clean it up, and put the new cover on and fill it back up. On this one, I'm going to cover it like I said. If you give me a minute, I'm just going to rotate it so you can see the locking differential since it's open. See here, you can see the yellow springs. Yellow is probably a lead-based paint. You know, when they assemble it, they like to paint things and see what the tolerances are and things like that. But the yellow springs are, you know, pretty indicative on this car that it has an Auburn posi unit. Posi meaning limited slip differential. That's how you tell if you have an Auburn or not. This is a 97. When you go to 98, I believe they went to the Torsen style. So there's a bunch of different rear end combinations with the insides, the internals that you can have depending on the year of your car and what car it is, if it's a truck or whatever. There's an Eaton unit in there too sometimes in the trucks. But this is an Auburn, and we're going to use the right weight fluid for an Auburn, and going to use Lucas so that we don't have to use the limited slip differential additive. But if you do use just conventional, the cheapest stuff you can get, you're going to want to use that additive. And I'll put a link to that too so you can see it. So I'm going to go ahead and cover this unit so that we don't get any stuff in it. There you go. It doesn't have to be perfect either. You just have to get it covered. You don't want to, you got to be very careful not to break off any little pieces of foil into the differential. Because if you do that and it gets stuck in there, the last thing you want is metal in there. I mean, it's soft enough, it'd probably just disappear anyway, but you still don't want that. So just be careful. Also, you want to wear safety glasses here. So I'm going to pretend like I am. You could probably take a Scotch-Brite to that and get it a little bit better, but that's not something I have on hand right now, and I'm really not worried about it. Differential oil is really thick, so for it to leak, you got to really mess it up. So what I'm going to do, went ahead and got the actual Felpro gasket for it, which I think is important. You don't really want to be using, you know, just cheaping out on stuff. I mean, it's $5, and then you get the real thing. by the time you bought RTV that's made for use with gear oil, you're going to spend more money anyway. You don't need both, you can just use a gasket. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little gear oil on the gasket to help hold it in place. I know you can't see this, but I'm just going to kind of coat the whole thing with it. So I got fresh gear oil too, not using the old stuff. See a lot of guys dip into the old pan, you don't want to do that. It's not going to use that much of it. Now you see the whole thing soaked like that. You just want to go ahead and line this thing up. And once it's in place, it's really not going anywhere, which is nice. The gear oil is real sticky. All right, looking good. Now you want to spread this on here, but one thing you don't want to do, which is what I just did a little bit, it's not bad, but you don't want to get it in the holes for the bolts, because we're going to torque these things down to a certain tightness, and if you get a significant amount of this in there, it's going to impact the torque as far as the reading goes, and then you have it wrong. I mean, this isn't the most sensitive part of the car by any means, but still like to do it right if we're going to do it. Or, again, it doesn't have to be, rocket science either, but might as well make some effort to do it what it's supposed to be. And now, just like that sucked right to that differential, it's going to also suck right up to the cover, just as it sucked up good to the rear axle. So. Next, I'm going to get the freshly painted bolts. Now you can see that cover's on there. Got it nice and oiled up. Got gear oil rubbed on it pretty liberally. It's going to really help it just kind of stick on there and seal up. And yeah, once this thing's all stuck, then we're going to go ahead and fill it. Got one of those cheap plastic pumps. I've never used one of those before. Usually what you'd use is just a bunch of hose if you have a hard time. This one fills from a kind of an odd spot. But I do have the car jacked up pretty good. And it's hanging nice and low. So I might be able to get the bottle right in there. If not, I got a little plastic pump, and we'll use the plastic pump to fill it. Those plastic pumps are pretty flimsy though, so I wouldn't be surprised if it broke. But that's what we'll do next. Alright, so one of the things that I didn't show earlier is the old differential cover. So it was pretty rusty and gross and had a bunch of gasket material stuck to it. This is it now. Nice fresh coat of Rust-Oleum on the back. Sanded that with like 150 grit on a palm sander just to knock it out real quick. It has a pretty nice shine to it. It's nothing special. Not supposed to be special either. It's just protecting it for the future. On the inside, clean it up good. You're going to see there's actually a magnet in there. You can see it. You want to make sure you clean that magnet really good. That's super important. That was there catching a bunch of debris. Every car is going to have metal shavings on there. It's normal to get a little bit. You don't want a ton, but it's there to catch that and keep it out of circulation. So anyway, that's all cleaned up. I used brake cleaner to clean it up on the inside. The outside I used brake cleaner after I sanded it good, and then just hit it with that Rust-Oleum paint. And ready to go. So I also painting up the bolts. A piece of cardboard. Not sure if you can see that or not. So they look good too. Something to keep in mind though, there's 2 bolts on this particular 10 bolt that are longer than all the rest. And there's these brackets here that hold the brake line. Well, actually that's the emergency brake cable, I apologize, not the brake line. But they hold that e-brake cable for each side. And there's 2 longer bolts for those because it goes through that wire holder there and then into the diff cover. So we're going to put those in last. First thing you want to do, you want to make sure you got the magnet towards the bottom of the car or the pan. This cover, it's not perfectly symmetrical, so that's how you're going to want it, is towards the bottom. The good news here, you can feel that thing suck right on, which is awesome. You'll see a lot of stuff online if you're doing some research on working on cars. If you haven't worked on cars for a long time, people talking about cleaning up gasket surfaces, and they make it sound like it's got to be a brand new piece of metal, and it's never going to look perfect when you're done unless you know, technically machine it, I guess is the word for it. I mean, if you're going to sand or use some abrasives, but really the common sense prevails there. You just got to be able to rub your hand across it, you know, and is it smooth? It should feel like a, you know, a nice smooth piece of metal. It's going to have some staining on it because it's not a brand new car. And that gasket's been on there for 22 years, so there were some imperfections in the steel, and you know what? Yeah, I used a razor blade. And guys will say, oh, I use plastic and all this other stuff. And I wish I would have zoomed in on it, but there's a number 3 stamped in this gasket mating surface right about here on the differential. And if a razor blade put some sort of damage on this thing worse than that number 3 that's stamped in the damn thing from the factory, then I want to buy more of those razor blades. Because there's no way that you're going to gouge that surface worse than, you know, a number stamped into the casting. I mean, it's just, there's no way that, unless you're really trying to hurt that gasket mating surface, I don't think a razor blade or, yeah, a paint scraper is ever going to really hurt that too bad. You'd have to really be trying to gouge that thing out. That's the moral of the story. So now when we tighten this, we're going to do it in a cross pattern. I don't know if you can even see that anymore. But, so tightening in a cross pattern is kind of easy to explain. So what we're going to do is we're going to tighten this bolt, and then this bolt.
And then this bolt, and then this bolt. This one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one.
We're just going to go around probably 2 times with a torque wrench and just make sure everything's buttoned up the way it's supposed to be. And as long as it is, which I don't foresee any issues there, then it'll all seal up nice. All that's really left is to torque this thing down. So that's what we're going to do. I went ahead and hand tightened all the bolts. So right where they're supposed to be. As far as position goes, we got the 2 long ones where they belong. We have the emergency brake holders installed here, and then back here you can't really see 'cause it's behind the this here, but behind the pan hard bar back here you can see there's a bracket too. My finger's pointing to it. It's really self-explanatory. It looks a whole lot like this one here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to torque these down 22 foot-pounds per bolt. All right. I'm using a click style wrench. You're probably going to hear it click or at least see it click. And we're going to do it in a cross pattern, and then I'm going to go back and double check them. So I'm going to start at the top. Again, I'm going for 22. There it is. Let's see, I went it directly diagonal across from it. There's my click. There it is. Next one. The 22 foot-pounds is not a lot of pressure, but it's enough to hold this thing on and seat that gasket. There you go. And again, you just turn it so you hear the click. These click type torque wrenches, they're actually, the cheap ones are pretty accurate. I hate buying non-USA made tools, but you can't really beat the value of this if you're a hobbyist, because I mean, if you're not doing this every day, you don't want to spend a ton of money on a torque wrench. You want to avoid using an extension, because up here that would have been a lot easier to use an extension, but that can alter your reading if you got adapters and extensions and stuff on there. So this is a 3/8 drive style torque wrench, and I did not, usually I use a lot of 1/2-inch sockets and adapters just out of habit. I don't know why I do that, but I do. But here I made sure I used a 3/8-inch drive socket, no adapters, no extensions. I just went ahead and did that top bolt. I'm going to redo this one. Go back up here again. Just making sure, because things change. That's why you do it in the cross pattern. Just making sure that we're good. I'm getting a little extra on here, which isn't a good thing. Doesn't hurt anything. And again, you're not building a space shuttle here either. I mean, it's a 97 Trans Am. You're not going to hurt it. If you're off by a couple foot-pounds or whatever, it's not going to be a big deal. I think that's all of them. So yeah, there we go. All torqued down, good to go, double checked. I feel good about it, and we're just going to fill it up with some oil, and hopefully she seals up, which I think she will, and go from there. I'm going to move this camera so you can see the oil filler, because that's an important part of this. It's actually hidden on this car. Not real hard to find, but if yours, this is a very clean car, as you can see underneath, for 22 years old. This one had a very, very gentle life, and that's why I bought it. But a lot of times these are a lot crustier than this and a lot dirtier underneath, especially up in the Northeast where I am. You see a lot of road salt damage and stuff like that. This is obviously clean. but it's going to give you a good idea of where to look for it. As far as tools go to open up the oil fill plug, it's just a 3/8 extension is all you need. I already went ahead and loosened mine, so that's going to be easy for the camera, but you got to really give it some go too, so make sure it's nice and deep, and you don't want to put the tool in too shallow and then round it out, because then you'll be in a world of hurt. Alright guys, so I had a really hard time here showing you this oil fill plug, but I think you can see it here. So this is on the passenger side of the car. We're looking through the wheel well right now, and see just under that the casting of it, you can see that square. That's where you're going to put your 3/8 extension. All you do is put it in there and loosen it up. I already did loosen it up a little bit, and I got some of the junk from around there cleaned up. I recommend a little wire brush, hit it with some brake cleaner. That way when you do take it off, you don't get stuff down in there. You don't want that old rust getting in there or anything like that. And you'll see that you can't get this bottle in there and really do a whole lot, but you can just barely pour it in. And there's enough room on this car too. If you use a little piece of hose, you can tip the bottle up high. We're probably going to end up doing that here in a second. Alright guys, back at it, just filling up the axle the rest of the way. I just wanted to do it from this angle too, so you can see that you actually can just barely squeak this bottle in here without a pump. They're all a little bit different, but there's room here to do it. If you're using a regular quart style bottle, that tip is going to just clear. So you do have to bend it a little bit towards the end. Now on this car, it calls for 3.5 pints, which is just under 2 quarts, and that's about what I got here. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this new bottle and start filling it up. Honestly, measuring it's kind of a moot point, because when a differential is full, it usually empties out of the fill hole. It's at a specific height so that you can't overfill it. And if you have the stock cover with no hole or anything, which is what we have here, there's no other way to put fluid in it. So you literally can't do it wrong unless you put the wrong stuff in there. So I'm going to go ahead and start filling this. One of the things you probably notice is that I got tires laying underneath here too. And that's actually something that I do on purpose. So whenever I support the car on jack stands alone, I always use jack stands, first of all, never just a jack, because I've had jacks fail. I actually had an engine lift fail once too. That was pretty scary. So hydraulic stuff does fail. So I always make sure I use, just regular heavy duty jack stands. Mine are really big actually. They're probably overkill for this car. And then also the tires laying underneath. Obviously the rims on there, if the car ever fell off the jack stands, it would at least land on the tires to give me a chance to get out. You always want to think of that stuff. So long story short, you want a bottle and a half in there on this car, which is 3.5 pints. They're quart bottles, so 4 pints would be 2 quarts. So you want basically half a bottle left when you're done, or about that. Obviously, we used a little bit earlier too when we were installing the gasket and stuff like that. So it's not perfect. So now I wiped everything down. It's still running out at me, which means it's full now, which is good. Definitely got it all in. I'm sure there's torque specs for this oil plug. I have no idea what they are. I'm just going to tighten it till it feels good. Not over, of course, because you don't want that, but just something in between. Cool. There you have it. I'll finish.